The Debt Sustainability Analysis Framework for Low-Income Countries produces mechanical signals for the risk of debt distress by comparing projected values of each debt burden indicator under the baseline and stress test scenarios against the corresponding thresholds. These mechanical signals are drawn from data for the first 11 years of the projection period. Among many stress test scenarios that can influence the mechanical signals, the Debt Sustainability Analysis Framework for Low-Income Countries picks signals from the most extreme shock for each debt burden indicator. The most extreme shock is defined as the shock that produces the highest value of that indicator in any of the first 11 years. Let's analyze the mechanical signals through charts. For each debt burden indicator, one of three possibilities can be observed. In the first case, the projected values of the debt burden indicator do not breach the corresponding threshold under the baseline or under the most extreme shock scenario. This no-breach case suggests that, according to this debt indicator, future debt distress risk is not significant. In the second case, projected values for the debt burden indicator do not breach the corresponding threshold in the baseline scenario, but they breach the threshold for the most extreme shock scenario. In this case, this debt burden indicator signals some risk of future debt stress. In the third case, projected values of the debt burden indicator breach the corresponding debt threshold in the baseline scenario, which automatically implies that a breach also occurred under the most extreme shock scenario. This situation reveals higher risk of debt distress. The signals from all relevant debt burden indicators are combined to produce the mechanical risk rating. There are three main categories for the risk of debt distress. First, low risk of debt distress if none of the relevant debt burden indicators breaches the respective threshold, neither in the baseline nor in the most extreme shock scenario. Second, moderate risk of debt distress if none of the relevant debt burden indicators breaches the respective threshold in the baseline scenario, but at least one threshold is breached for the most extreme shock scenario. And third, high risk of debt distress if at least one debt burden indicator breaches the corresponding threshold in the baseline scenario, which automatically implies the threshold is also breached for the most extreme shock scenario.